Let's wrap this up, shall we? Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. On the mend and feeling much better, we are wrapping up our first edition Pathfinder Sorcerer build by talking about the overall general strategy and tactics that you're going to want to employ over the course of your adventuring career. But before we start covering those little details, if you're new here to the channel, then go on down, hit that subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or, if you've already gone on ahead and registered yourself on such a legendary roster of incredible heroes, then go on down, hit that like button, and share the video far and wide. Now, let's go ahead and talk about generally how you're going to want to play this class and go along with this particular build. So, to start with, it's kind of the same for any other spellcaster. Low levels, you're going to be fairly vulnerable, and you're not going to quite participate as well in every single combat as you may want to. You're going to have to be very careful in how regularly you employ your spells. Now, with that said, you're still going to have more staying power than, say, a wizard will, but even then, your more melee-focused characters, the fighters, paladins, barbarians, even the rogues, are probably going to be outclassing you for the first couple of levels. It's going to be about level 5, level 4 when you really begin to hit your stride. Level 6 and 7 in particular, when you really start to take off with the number of spells and you're really getting into your third level spells. Is at that point, the different kinds of buffs that you can employ with haste, enlarged person, these kinds of things will do so much for your overall ability to manipulate the combat potential on the battlefield, mess with the action economy with haste and the like. So then is when things are really going to take off and that balance of power is going to skew more into your favor. But for this particular build, since we're focusing more on conjuration to increase save DCs and boost the strength and constitution of summoned creatures, summon monster and other similar spells are going to be of massive use for you. And when you use these spells, you want to place your monsters to set up flanking for your rogues and different melee characters. Your rogues in particular are going to love you because that lets them get their sneak attack bonus going regularly. It'll be the same thing for ninja as well. And then also, NPCs that attack these summoned creatures aren't attacking your allies or you. Every attack there is essentially, wasted's not quite the right word, but you're the real threats while the summoned monsters are just in-house support that you bring out there. So really, every attack that goes towards them, hit or miss, that's an attack that didn't go to you and your allies, so that will be a massive win. And even then, if they decide to just ignore the summoned creatures and try to go after you or your allies, well, now they're ignoring creatures that are still a potential threat to them, that are still providing bonuses to the rest of the party. And remember, once you get on to later summon monster abilities, where you're getting monsters with their own spell-like abilities, that's going to do a lot for your overall spellcasting potential, because you're essentially summoning in more magic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you have spellcasting endurance beyond most spellcasters, but your big weakness is going to be your lack of flexibility in spell selection. Aside from the whole thing I mentioned earlier, at low levels you're going to be more vulnerable. So, to this end, use magic device, and magic wands, scrolls, and staves will do a lot to expand your flexibility in this regard. This will let you activate different magic items, and even magic items that are using spells not on your spell list. It still will be a little bit tricky, a little bit difficult. You may not get them to fire every time, but you still have a good charisma, and use magic devices, something you definitely want to invest ranks into. So, as long as you're doing that, you're going to be pretty reliably able to cast other kinds of spells and use other kinds of magic. And also remember, every other level after 4th, you can swap one spell you know for another on your spell list. So you're still going to want to make careful selections, but you still have a way of rectifying that, being able to swap out at least one spell for another one that is in your list, and keep yourself able to develop your spell list over time. So if you find something that's not being used as regularly as you like, or is not really working as effectively as you would have hoped for, you do have some means of remediating that, of fixing that. But careful spell selection is going to involve picking spells with a wide range of applicability and uses, or are just so powerful that they're an auto-include. Spells like Animate Object for combat and utility use. There's so many different objects to animate out there. A particular favorite is statues, because statues come in a wide variety of shapes, sizes, forms that can really do a lot to amp up your combat ability and still provide utility as well. And then spells like Time Stop, while it's a 9th level spell, and most 9th level spells are just ungodly powerful, it's just so powerful it's an auto-include, because it's giving you a minimum of 2 turns of spell casting where you're entirely safe, which really skews the action economy in your favor. And then Greater Summon Genie allows you to bring in more spell casting, because just the spell-like abilities with that creature are just incredible. And then bear in mind that you also have feats in place that are boosting its strength and constitution, so it makes it an even more formidable presence on the battlefield. And then the fact that you're increasing save DCs for all your conjuration spells means spells like Black Tentacles are going to be just that much harder to resist. With that said though, being a spellcaster, you do have a little bit of order of operations to keep in mind. Your main focuses should be buffing allies, debuffing enemies, and battlefield control. These are the first 3 things you really want to be looking at, looking for opportunities to affect the course of battle in one of these 3 ways. Blasting spells are going to be more of a tertiary concern in most instances. However, we do get an exception here. If you pick out the Dazing spell, Metamagic feat, this will allow you to debuff en masse with some AoE spells, in particular spells like Fireball. So throwing a Fireball out there, even though it's a very common spell or elemental resistance as well as outright immunity, on top of the fact that saves can do so much to reduce damage, if you still do even a little bit of damage, you can still leave a bunch of enemies dazed all at once for at least 1 turn, which is pretty worth it. It makes a spell like Fireball that much more valuable, although you can still use Dazing spell with other options like Lightning Bolt or Dragon's Breath. Bear in mind that when you do this, it does increase the overall spell slot that has to be used with it, so you can start to eat up higher level spell slots pretty quickly. But again, we have a lot of flexibility here, and then the equipment we use also just throws in other things, other flexibility options for us, like the Mnemonic Vest, or even if you were to pick up Pearls of Power as an example. Those didn't make it in the equipment guide video, but having Pearls of Power on hand will let you restore spell slots, since you're a spontaneous spellcaster, and add into your maximum daily usage. So definitely a worthwhile get, and really opens up just even more options for you as you just increase your casting potential throughout the whole day. But what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? Either way, hit those like or dislike buttons. Go on down below and we'll start discussing and hashing everything out. And remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time. Stay tuned for next time when we start covering the Inquisitor. With all that said, though, I've been your host once again. Thank you all so much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.